Welcome to the Safeguarding and Domestic Abuse sector for professionals working in the world of safeguarding and domestic abuse, and for anyone who believes in harnessing the power of sector-led learning and improvement. The conversation unfolds week by week, season by season. In this space, expect to hear me talk about this work which has the ability to change lives, alongside having powerful conversations with those who are taking action and can inspire us on our learning and improvement journey. This is the Safeguarding and Domestic Abuse sector. Hi Louisa, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Louisa, can we start by you telling us what you do and how your background led to that, please?
I am the expert writing coach and founder of Louisa Herridge Publishing. So I help people connect to the power of their story and write what are best-selling books. And this all came from me sharing my story back in 2019 in a book collaboration. I was an English teacher coming out of domestic abuse, and writing became initially catharsis for myself. And then I was invited to join a book collaboration. And when I put it out, people started to get in touch to say thank you. And I didn't realise at the time that that was the start of my what would be business in the future. But that starting point in 2020, when that book was released and women that have been through domestic abuse got in touch, was the first signs that sharing your story is so important.
Thank you for that. And what a time 2020 was anyway. So that's amazing. So do we all have a story to tell, or is that just for famous and magical people?
Oh my goodness me, absolutely. So the tagline that is more than a tagline, it's what I fully believe is your story is your superpower. But limiting beliefs, particularly in women, often tell us that our stories aren't good enough, and we compare against big traumas and who's had more happen or done or been through to them. But I call it your breadcrumbs, your Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs. If we look back and pick up the breadcrumbs of your story, it tells you how you got from there to here. And what you're doing now is no accident. So everything that everybody's doing, whether it's in business, in life, there's a reason. And the story of how you came there is integral to everything. And the biggest sort of imposter syndrome that I deal with is people not thinking that their story is valid. And my mission, as a part of my business, I'm currently in the hundreds, but I want to help thousands of women to realise that they no longer need to be silenced, and sharing your story in whatever way, it doesn't have to be a book, but sharing your story is a step towards breaking cycles.
Wow, that's really powerful. And if our story does contain pain, how do we write about that?
This is where it needs to be handled carefully. Myself, when I started writing back in, I just alluded to it, in 2019, 2020, I was writing from a position of pain at the time. And I think that's okay. Sometimes people need to do that. When we're talking, strategically and commercially in business, it's not good, because if you're putting out a book, positioning yourself as an expert in whatever your niche may be, but you are bleeding on the page, metaphorically, it's not as effective as what we would want it to be. So I know back in 2020, that chapter, even though it inspired people, it impacted people, and I don't regret doing it, I know I was writing it inside the pain. And I think the true power comes when you're able to look back. And, you don't have to be years on, we're all on a healing journey. You don't have to have done all the things, but it's being able to look with some perspective. So I call it storytelling for success. It's underpinned by positive psychology. And it's the idea that we are in charge of how we tell our own stories, because quite often the way that society, peers, family, friends, schools have influenced us, particularly if you have been in any sort of narcissistic, coercive, people-pleasing sort of environments, we don't sometimes tell our story in the right way. So how I work with people is I help them to tell the story from a position of power. And it's not always possible to tell every part of your story if you're still in it. But once you step through it, we look back and it's where it's taken us to now. And you have to tread carefully because it can be really triggering. It can be cathartic writing your story, but it can be triggering. So it has to be dealt in a safe way as well.
And is there an element there that if we do pause before we tell it, we might then be able to hear about the strength on the other side more? So we'll
Absolutely.
get the picture.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a fine line between pausing and being silenced. And that's the important work that I do with women, particularly when people come into, I run free challenges, I have a group, I do lots of workshops, and there's women that feel silenced because of shame. Shame is a big factor in a lot of women's stories and men's as well. But, in my lived experience and with the women that I worked with, it has been mainly women. Um, Comparison, and it is that my story is not that important. So the work that I do, I always say we go big, you have to do the hand actions, and then we go small and we look at all the pillars, everything that you've been through, ups and downs throughout your life, to be able to look objectively at your breadcrumbs, so to speak. And sometimes we need more space. And I had one lady back in 2021. I did the Storytelling for Success workshop with her in Manchester in a room of people. And she said, it doesn't work for me. I can't reframe it. I can't look at it. Because when I do the reframing, I ask three questions. How did it shape your life? What impact, good and bad, has it had on your life? And what good came from it? And that's the space. Because if you can't find the good, you're still in it. You're still in the pain point. And she's like, I can't find it. This doesn't work for me. And everybody else, it was working, and they were talking about parts of their lives. Anyway, fast forward a few years, she came to a workshop and she signed up to work with me, and she wrote a book chapter in a collaboration book. And before she signed up, she said to me, Louisa, I need to let you know it works. But it was because she'd had space, she'd come through it. And she said, and I've taught it to my teenage daughters now. We always look. And it's not about everything happens for a reason and using cliches and things like that. It's taking control of your own story to find your own power, not what somebody else has put onto you.
Got it. Because Louisa, for everyone to know, I'm working with you at the moment, and I came to know you through a challenge, which was a fantastic way of doing it. And I recommend that to everybody. I guess that it's interesting to me to think, are you serving the author or are you serving the reader? Or do we have to do both to make it a good output?
This is where a lot of authors get stuck. It has to be the reader. Fundamentally, it has to be for the reader. So you did my challenge. The first day of the challenge is who. You have to be really clear who you're writing to. And anybody in business will know this from your ideal client avatars and whatnot that we do. You've got to know who you're speaking to, because you don't want to just speak into a void. So everybody has a story. You asked me before, is it everybody or is it just celebrities? Not everybody needs to write a memoir. And that's the hard truth that I have to tell some people, is that nobody really wants to read your life story. Your friends and family and people that were in those circumstances with you and lived it will enjoy reading it. But if it's not reaching a reader with their pain points and what they need to take from it, it's not going to be as successful. So when you start writing, it's no longer about you, it's about your reader.
Got it. Thank you. And I know this happens, so I'm going to ask this for everybody. But what if we're just asking ourselves, what's the point in telling my story?
Absolutely, everybody, a lot of people ask that, what's the point in telling my story? I mean, I work with mainly women in business, particularly if they're writing their own books. And a lot of people are writing their book because it's going to lead into a product and a service that they're going to sell. So their story is important, but it's value, it's teaching. But one of my favorite ways to work, if not the favorite way, is book collaborations. So I've worked with hundreds now of women through collaborations. I've done 10 different collaborations with different collaboration hosts, bringing different audiences in, from performers to entrepreneurs and your normal people, your 9 to 5 jobbers, your retired people, and I've worked with so many people who wanted to tell their story, knew they had something to say, but didn't have the confidence to say it. And the feedback that my clients always tell me is that I have a knack of drawing out the story that needs to be told. And the first step is mindset, because I reframe who am I to write a book to who am I to not write a book. Because when we think about the things that we've lived through, so lived experience, as well as qualifications, as well as the certificates, as well as all the things that we can teach. No, it's my secret formula is your lived experience plus your expertise is your spark. And there can be other books out there in the exact same topic as you, the same niche, but nobody has got that formula. Nobody has got your lived experience as well. So yes, the fears will be there. So the reframe, who am I to not tell my story?
I love that. And because people listening to this podcast are very interested in creating change, is there something in storytelling about that?
100%. It's if you look back through history, look at what's happening in our living history now. If people stayed silent, there would be no change. We wouldn't move forward. We wouldn't, the work that you're doing, and we've spoken a lot when you and I have been working about people that have spoken out, trying to go against the patriarchy, going against the system. And if those brave people didn't speak out, there would be no change. Could go right back to past movements when, suffragette movement and speaking out. It's all storytelling. We're storytelling creatures. We told stories before we had pen and paper, and stories change the world. And that is when we keep silent, that's where we're holding back who we really are.
Wow, that's really powerful. So this mission about, you've already helped hundreds, we want to get to thousands. What we want is women finding the courage to tell their story. What about generational? We've both got daughters.
Yeah.
What are we doing as role models by doing this?
As role models, I sit back and look at my daughter sometimes and I think, gosh, she just amazed me. And she asked me a question actually about 2 weeks ago. She said to me, it came completely out of the blue. She said to me, Mummy, what do you think you'd be like if you'd been your own mum?
Okay.
And I said, why? She said, because you're always saying things about how you look and how big your bum is, or something like that. If you'd been your own mum, do you think you'd be different? And I was like, oh my goodness me, yeah, I would. I would. Because those generational things in me from my mum and my grandma and everybody had been on a diet my whole life growing up. And, I'm not blaming my mum here. It was the culture, it was the 80s, the 90s, it was what it was. But I thought, she's 10 years old. How insightful is that? That
Yeah.
she can see that my um, inner child things that still come up and bite me on the arse in terms of how I look and feel. She's realized that if I'd been brought up with a different way of self-love in the way that she has, that I would, as an adult, be different.
Wow. She's clocked it. And hopefully by the time she is 17, 20, like my girls, she's already, not going to have that. Because, in the morning we're talking about, Mom, I'm bloated, I can't wear that. And I'm saying, women have had a number done on them, haven't they? Why, men aren't thinking like that.
Yeah,
So
100%. I mean,
we
she
like
she's
that, I guess.
she's still, a tween, as they call them. She is body conscious. I'm not saying that it's, all of those issues are just suddenly not there, because like you say, there is that um, you know, impact on, like, women have had a number done on us. But in terms of how does telling our stories create change and for the next generation, she's watching me rise. She's watched the last 7 years. Um, all I can do is and continue to rise and bring her up with me. And it is cycle breaking. And I think cycle breaking on the online space, with when you're surrounded with empowered women left, right, and centre, like I am with the people that I hang around with, cycle breaking gets bandied around a lot. And sometimes it can be like, oh, cycle breaking, here we go again. It's not easy, cycle breaking. It's not easy. And that's what I know I'm doing. And I know that it's going to take several generations to unpick the harm that's happened. But then you read some of the politics that's going on at the minute, and you think, gosh, we could go back 100 years. Um, so it's, our girls just need to know um, they're enough. I think that's the biggest thing, to be enough.
Sure, absolutely. And our boys do too as well. They're having a very unusual time as well at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah. When I say our girls, I was meaning mine and yours rather than the royal. But yeah, boys as well. Absolutely. Young people in general, with social media and everything that's out there. It's a tough time to grow up.
Yeah, it is. Louisa, that was just a snapshot, really, and we could have gone on think for hours. But so for everybody else who doesn't know your work as well as me, we'll put everything in the show notes. But just for you to give us a walk around, where do we find you if we're interested in your work?
Absolutely. So, Louisa Herridge Publishing is my publishing house, and I can help you to write, plan, and publish your book. louisaherridge.co.uk is my website, and you can find me on all the socials. I grew up wishing I had a more normal name. But now it's very useful because there's only one of me. So I'm on Instagram, Louisa_Herridge, and I'm on Facebook as Louisa Herridge. Just come and add me. I love chatting to people. Books are my thing. My challenge is in my Facebook group, and it's until Facebook deletes it, it's the last one is still live. So if anybody wants to come and check that out, you can do.
And I think you've quoted me on saying that was life changing for
Life
me.
changing, yeah, life
You've
changing.
seen that one, haven't you, Louisa? You like that one?
I
It
did
was.
like that one. I did. I loved it. Yeah.
And I think we've actually taken a stand today because we both feel we're recording this in a heat wave. and we both feel very unpolished, but we just decided we were going to come on camera anyway.
Absolutely. On camera anyway. I've been swimming last night and put my hair in a bobble, and this is us in the heat wave because, yeah, absolutely. It's we don't need to be polished. I think that's a lesson for us as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's lovely to talk to you. Thank you, Louisa.
Thanks for your time, Donna.
Are you ready to find out more about independent review work? You can download my free workshop, which is called How to Establish an Independent Review Practice, which aligns with the next steps in your career, to find out how you can begin your journey to independent review work. If you are watching on social media, click the link in the comments. If you are listening to the podcast, click the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening. If this episode has been useful or enlightening, please leave me a review on iTunes. I'm always open to feedback, and I will really appreciate your review.